Hello, welcome to the Dayton Union NAACP monthly community meeting titled Gun Violence, a Public Health Crisis. Tonight's meeting has been something that's been on the NAACP mind for many years, since I've been president since 2007. We've been talking about this gun violence for a very long time. But it's got to the point now whereas it's a crisis. It's been a crisis. We've been in crisis mode. And we're going to hear from some experts here this evening to see how to address this very important issue. So to moderate tonight's session is going to be our Health Committee Chair, which is Dr. Morris L. Brown. And he's going to share with you who his distinguished panelists are. And we're going to get engaged in this conversation. And we're going to dig right in. Dr. Brown?
Thank you, President Ford. And good evening to everybody. Welcome to what we're hoping is one of many health committees dealing with the needs of our community. I welcome the opportunity to serve as the committee chair, and I give homage to those that have sat in this chair before, and they've done an excellent job. Desperate times require desperate action. I'm known as a man of desperation, so some of you know me. I see faces in the audience that I took care of for years when I was practicing medicine. I took care of your family members, so there are very few people in here that don't know downtown Morris Brown. So I'm here now in a different setting, but it's my honor to chair this, and hopefully we can accomplish what we want. As mentioned by the President, gun violence is a public health crisis. We've been kind of keeping our heads in the sand about this, and we've allowed others to bury their heads in the sand. But hey, listen, bullets. Sand don't stop bullets. Sand won't stop bullets. And we pray and we comfort, and so far, praying and comfort has not stopped the bullets. The bullets are raising over our kids' beds when they go to sleep. Those of us in West Dayton and North Dayton. The bullets are all outside. We don't know where they're coming from. We hear them, and we duck, and we teach our kids to duck. Now, some girls in the community don't know about this, but this is our culture. Now, what gets the press are the mass shootings, and I am definitely against the mass shootings, but we're also talking about that Saturday night special that we all know. Show of hands, how many people in the audience have been affected by gun violence? You observed it, witnessed it, or the bullet hit you? And I don't see a single, I think everybody. So you see why we're talking about this, folks? But we're not going to just talk about it. We're going to move you to action. That's the purpose of this. So my distinguished panel, which I'm going to present them to you, but I want to let you know why they're here and what I need you to do. Each of these distinguished people, both the lady and the gentleman, are representing groups that are active in our community. So when this person talks, as he talked about his commitment to this problem, if you want to be a part of what he's doing or something he said, please feel free, because I know we're going to run out of time, but as we go throughout tonight, come up. If Brother Shackelford says something to motivate you and you think you might want to join Street Soldiers or some of his other groups, just leave your cell phone and your email, go take your seat, leave the pen. Each of our panelists have a sign-up sheet in front of them. That's the purpose of this. We're not just here to talk about it. We want to leave here with a committed group of people. I would love everybody in here to sign one of those sheets, and I got extra sheets. I want to run out of paper that you guys are so excited about. Being a part of the solution. Because if we don't do it, who's going to do it? Our babies ain't going to do it because they're not going to be here. They're going to be dead. So we got to do this. Who allowed this to happen? We did. The adults allowed this liberal attitude toward guns. A culture now where assault weapons are part of the culture. Only in America. When assault weapons were banned, our death rate, gun rates, compared to some other Western culture, we were still ahead. We still led the pack, but not like it is now. Once those assault weapon ban disappeared, NRA got in these politicians' pockets and started portraying that that gun as the masculine image, and even women that want to be masculine or have an image of being masculine, they give you a pink AR-15. So folks, we got to stop this culture. We got to slow this down, okay? So what I'm going to do is let the panelists introduce themselves. They're going to all make at least one statement as to what they're all about. And then we have several questions that we're going to be asking them. And for some questions, there will be one answer. For other questions, there will be multiple. Now, once I get through the questions, then we're going to entertain questions from the audience. So you'll have a chance to talk also. But what I do want everybody to do is sign one of those sheets. And if you do that, I will come to my goal. Thank you for your time. Brother Shackelford.
My name is Marley Shackelford. I'm the president of a group called Black Brothers, Black Sisters Involvement. And up under that umbrella is like 6 other groups: Street Soldiers, Peace Ambassadors, Teen Hub, Young Men Against Violence, right? So I do a lot of stuff. I'm representing more of Street Soldiers when it comes to violence. Our motto is victory over the streets. That's our motto. By any positive means necessary. So that's what I do. I consider myself an anti-self-destruction person, meaning that everything that I do has to be based on understanding the constructive view of young men first. Young men first, because I'm a man and I want young men to know that I'm here to lift them up.
Thank you.
Good evening, all. My name is Julius Decker, and I pretty much stay in the background a lot as far as dealing with issues of gun violence, because I generally work with our youth. I work with every single age group, including the adults as well. And so administratively, we're always trying to find ways to keep our babies safe. That's our first priority. I work in education, but our first priority is not to educate them. It is to make sure that when parents send their children to school, they are safe first. Because there's no use in educating them if they can't use it. And lastly, I work as far as in the many backgrounds, as far as in churches and also other organizations that are directly dealing with youth and the disabled.
Now, he was rather humble, but he is doctored. He's a psychologist. He just wants to be. Yeah, but if you got an interest in mental health, you're going to sign the sheet in front of him. And we'll help you find that group to
Hi, my name is Susie Wayne, and I am the current local lead for Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. And our group is, in real life, I'm just a first grade teacher. So I echo what you said about kids being safe at school. That's what brought me to Moms Demand Action, was trying to lead all these little first graders, 6-year-olds under my care safely and emotionally okay through active shooter drills. And I found out that I can't do it. I have to lie to them, tell them I'm gonna keep them safe when I know I can't. And I knew their tears and their fears were causing trauma to them when I did that, and I just felt like it was malpractice. So it brought me to Moms Demand Action. We are a nationwide group with state chapters and local groups. The local group in Dayton is not as old as some of the other groups in Ohio, but I've been a member of it since it started. I've been the local lead for about 4 years. And we are looking for lots of help. We fight in the State House, we write letters, we work with elections to try and elect people who qualify as gun sense candidates. We work with community partners like this, and we have a survivor group. We have Students Demand Action, which is also under the umbrella of Every Town for Gun Safety. They're kind of our research end, our legal end, and we are the boots on the ground that gets things rolling. So I look forward to working with all of you. Please, everyone, sign my sheet. And if you don't want to sign something, there's an easy way to join us. You just get your phone out and to the number 64433, text the word ready. 64433, text the word ready. It's right up here if you want to do that. And we are, like I said, we're nationwide, so we work with federal government officials, we work with state officials, and I just want to echo what was said earlier during the member meeting about the issue August 8th. We're on board with that. On board with saying no to that. We feel the same way. It's a civil rights issue. It's a women's issue too. And we feel like it's taking away some of our rights. So yeah, we echo that too. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
My name is Cameron Alzo. I'm Dayton Police Chief. I've been here for a year and a half. I obviously reference gun violence and violence. As an officer, as a chief, my staff is at the forefront dealing with a lot of the issues that we see in our communities day in, day out. To be honest, it becomes at times very depressing dealing with that, especially when we have nobody who says anything about violence as a whole. As an example, I just found out that we have a 9-day-old kid in Children's Hospital who was suffering a lot of injuries, and we don't have a single person saying anything to us. That's depressing, and you can see why droves of individuals are no longer considering this as a profession and leaving law enforcement. For every one person leaving, 9 people leaving law enforcement, only one's coming in, because it's becoming an issue. As it is, I think I was talking to you that suicide among a police officer is very prevalent. 2.5 times more people die by suicide than die by line of duty death. So it is a tragic situation. We're going to talk at more length. I was trying to tell you how to introduce myself other than just the gloom and doom part of it. But, I'm an immigrant, so we came to the U.S. because this is a shining light on the mountain hill. So I think we can definitely get there because there's a lot of talent sitting here, sitting there. At the end of the day, there is no one solution, and the solution is the community itself. When we decide as a collective that it's not going to happen in my street, not going to happen in my family, it's going to be over just like that. But we are not there yet. As a prime example of a 9-day-old kid where somebody as a way of thinking that, well, we're not going to see anything because we might be helping the police. Really? You're helping a 9-year-old kid who deserves to live a much healthier life than what they're dealing with right now. So, but the answer is all of us, not just the police. Because you can give me 100 more cops or 300 more cops and still not going to be more than enough than 140,000 people living in the city. And that's how, if you look at collectively at a lot of the healthcare communities where you have crime, but not to the level that we might have in some of the bigger cities, that's what you have. Where people pick up the phone and call because they don't like something, because they see some behavior that is just not normal, right? Somebody's doing something, they're looking to cars. That's just not what we do. We pick up the phone and call, and they're okay talking because what they're trying to do is protect the victims who are being harmed. And we have a lot of victimization in our community. So we need to focus on that. So I look forward to having a discussion, open discussion, figuring it out, because we don't have all the answers. If we did, we would have replied them by now. So we're looking for help.
Good evening. Reverend Dr. David Fox. I serve as a criminal justice chair for the NAACP. I have an extensive background in dealing with youth violence, dealing with violence in particular. And it goes all the way back to Stop the Killing program that we instituted here in Dayton, Ohio back in 1992. Part of that was the gun buyback program that we had. We had 3 gun buybacks. We also were a part of a group called the Interfaith Action to a Violence-Free America, where I worked with some of the Sisters of Precious Blood. We came together in 1994, in April of that month, at Courthouse Square and had what is called a prayer vigil. The Bible says in 2 Corinthians 7:14, if my people, which are called by my name, will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will heal their land. So we call upon divine intervention. This thing is bigger than us. And like Chief says, he can put police on every corner and can't stop it. Sometimes you got to call on God. We did 131 prayer vigils at the sites of all the murders for 3 years, from 1994 to 1997. Seeing the pain and suffering of some of the people was devastating, but we kept doing it anyway. This organization still functions to this very day. They meet once a month on the second Saturday at McIntosh Park at 12 noon. I also was working on a program called the Joshua Plan. The Joshua Plan was up near Good Samaritan Hospital at the time when they was here. And at that time, there was a lot of shootings in that area. And so what we did is went to that area and marched around the city block, just like Joshua did. And we kept marching until we was able to get some of the people that was causing the problems to march with us. I guess the real issue is we're not scared of these people. And I think that's what we have to do, is take our streets back. And then another part of that process is nonviolence resistance with Dr. King's philosophy on Kingian philosophy. We taught that to our young people. We had what is called a youth summit. We brought Dick Gregory in, we brought Jesse Jackson in, and we brought others in to work with these young people. We can make it. Things happen in this community. Dayton is a manageable city, and we can do something about it.
Thank you, panel. And if you want to leave it with, I don't need but leave it with Dr. Fox. So now we're going to go into the questions. It's going to be sort of a rapid fire. And any of you, I'll call on at least one person to answer, but any of the panelists that also want to contribute can do that. We'll get through these 10 questions, and then we're going to hear from you guys. So if you want to start making notes of your question, but commentary we're going to have to limit. But if you got a question, we'll hear your question. But these are the guys giving the commentary. So, Dr. Fox, I need you to address what are the root causes of gun violence, and how do we address them effectively?
Well, I'm up here as a spiritual person, even though my background is law enforcement, but from a spiritual context, we are body, soul, and spirit. And when we deal with that body, soul, and spirit, a person is either in a helpless stage or a hopeless stage. If they're in a helpless stage, they blame people outside of themselves for their problems. If they're in a hopeless stage, they blame themselves. Now, if they're in a helpless stage, they'll do anything from cuss you out to kill you. If they're in a hopeless stage, they'll harm themselves by cutting themselves or taking pills or eventually maybe even do suicide. So when we look at that and understand that the body cannot do anything other than what it's told to do by the soul. And if the soul tells the body what to do, that's wrong. For example, when I served in police work for 40 years, I locked up a lot of people, just like the chief. That's just the body. You lock them up and get back out of jail, they go back and do the same thing again. But when they get in jail, they get a chance to talk to psychologists, maybe behavioral scientists, maybe behavioral therapy, maybe have all these different people to talk to, but they only deal with the soul. It's not until the spirit is dealt with that the person changes. And so I think that the spirit needs to have more involvement with the concept of love. And if the spirit can have that concept of love, then it would change and alter their thinking. And as a result from that, their desire to harm someone would not be the same.
Pass the mic to Dr. Beckham. So Dr. Beckham, and thanks, Dr.
I'm sorry, Dr. Brown, I want to piggyback on this question.
Yeah, that is the question. That is exactly the question.
I wholeheartedly agree as far as with the spirit, the soul, and the spirit. But one of the main root causes, if you want to get just more simple and plain, it starts with us. He said, how do we get to be able to influence the spirit and give a spirit of love? And it comes down to how we raise our children. I mean, that's all of us, because we have all been influenced in a culture that basically tells us when we're mad, when we're upset, when we're depressed, we got to take it out either on ourselves or somebody else. Now, this is not blaming, or this is not saying anything, because owning a gun does not mean you are violent with it. But how many people in this audience own a gun? Raise your hand. Okay? So, most of the time when you are even keeled and you can think logically, you can have an opportunity to do the right thing. But what happens when you're angry and upset? Your mind switches. And you have a tendency, and this is psychological fact, you can be temporarily insane. And while you're doing that, your actions are what is the issue. And so we don't teach our children not to behave with their animal brain, their instinctual brain, their emotional brain. Then they will just act out on their feelings, emotions, or whatever they want to. And bottom line is that in some way, in some form, we have to resist the particular culture that says everybody needs a gun. They're making you scared, they're making you fear. And it's like, I need a gun just because he got a gun. He go buy more ammunition, I gotta go more ammunition. And the result of it is both of us end up being hurt in the long run. So one of the ways, start teaching your youth, teaching your own children. Not just teaching it, but you also have to model it. Because the first thing they're going to look at is you.
Anybody else want to?
Yes.
A lot of hands. Go ahead.
Just to add, when you ask that question, you know, I'm here to keep it real,
Yes, sir.
to make it right. So when you talk about that, you know, racism, adultism, sexism, poorism, all these warism, we have to address the isms. We really have to address the isms. And one of the things that my group does is, our goal is to keep them alive and free. So street soldiers, I have 118 street soldiers. We call ourselves ex-men and ex-women for God. So we work for God. But if we don't deal with stuff like that, deal with the real stuff, why one person was getting crack, one was getting cocaine, the person else getting crack got 10 times more time than one getting cocaine. We have got to really address that. We cannot hide from the real issues. We have to address it. So a spiritual piece is a big piece, but we've got to deal with the problem, and we have to become a part of the solution. And the solution is more than sitting on the panel. The solution is getting out there. They take church without walls, church with walls. I go to Omega, love my church, but I tell the pastor all the time, we got to go in the streets and we got to educate them young people. Last thing, the number one gang I teach for the last 10 years is UCP unconcerned parents. We've got to address the #1 gang. The #2 gang is KKK, kids killing kids. The #3 gang is KKK, kin killing kin. The village is on fire, and we need firemen and firewomen.
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on what all of these men said and add a couple of little things. First of all, yes, absolutely, we need to truly treat gun violence as a community health crisis, because we need to attack it from all areas in every way we can, from the street to the State House to Washington, D.C. The other thing I wanted to say is suicide. That's the #1 form of gun violence. It kills the 2/3 of the gun violence. Victims of gun violence are from suicide. So that's something that we need to address too. And we have a program for that called Be Smart for Kids that teaches people how to talk to their children about guns and how to keep their kids safe from guns. But it's also hate. Ohio is unfortunately an epicenter for hate. And we need to change that and attack that. Yeah, poverty. Poverty is an issue as well with gun violence. People with poverty tend to be victims of gun violence more often. Lax gun laws, finally. We have lax gun laws in Ohio. They're getting worse. And they're getting more lax. And like I said to Dr. Roberts earlier today, the gun lobby gets everything they want, and then they ask for more. And they just keep asking for more. So we need warriors in that. We need our own X-Men too. There is also an unbelievably ridiculous law that keeps, it's called the Peaceful Protection of Law Commerce Arms Act, which keeps the gun manufacturers from being civilly liable for anything that happens with their guns that they could have prevented. So we need to use all of the weapons that we have to fight this gun violence, and that includes, we should be funding gun violence research more. Every Town for Gun Safety has given me all those statistics about what really happens and what makes gun violence worse, that I just gave you. We need to pass state and federal laws that we know work, and we need to use the research that we have to pass those laws, and then do more research to make sure that we're not missing anything. And we need to fund gun violence interruption programs like the ones that you're talking about and the ones that these gentlemen are talking about. So we know those work. We know those can work. We just need to get together and get our voices heard in the State House where the funding comes from and the federal government.
And that was the second question, which you've already answered. Let's send them back towards the chief. Because I also had the chief down for that same question. What policies or laws will be most effective in reducing gun violence? Indeed.
Well, I mean, there's a law right now in one of the houses that restores the individual city's right to govern themselves. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere. It's like literally one line. It repeals what the legislators did last year or a couple of years ago, which takes away the city's ability to kind of govern itself. So I think that will be helpful. I guess I've seen this stuff on this law enforcement side for 32 years, and I believe that a lot of the violent crime, the motivation, the consequences are not a concern for people who pull triggers or commit violent crime. It's not. It's anger issues. It could be because of business dealing, meaning you might be in the wrong trade, or it could be under the beef. So I mean, you can obviously have commonsensical gun laws or other rules that you can have. But what the doctor said, I think, really speaks to me is that, you talked about the last question, who's responsible for what's the root cause? Well, we're the root cause because we are okay with the harm that's been committed, and we are okay with making excuses for offenders, and irrespective of what they look like. And we forget the fact that there's somebody on the other end who's being harmed by that action. So you can have commonsensical approaches to legislations, but from what I've seen, for violent crime, not property crime, for violent crime, you can have all the rules in the world, but somebody doesn't care. They're going to do what they want to do because there's an anger involved. So how we raise our kids from early on, or how do we deprogram them what a lot of community intervention program are doing. And I know I saw Mayor Mims, I don't know if he already left. I know we're having some conversations with certain people about maybe having that approach for Dayton. I know you're already doing that, but really having a holistic approach about how do you provide interruption. But then also, what do you do after that? Because once you provide interruption to violence, what do you do to get somebody out of that thought process? Because the consequences is the furthest thing that people think about when they commit violent crime. If consequences really were effective, we wouldn't have any crime. Because we have death penalties, we have life for life, 30-year prison sentences. That's really not a consequence. It's what you think about it. You're not thinking about things. So it is, it's a long-winded answer, but you really got to think about it. It's just not a law that you can enact. You really got to change people's hearts, because it's not okay if you have a disagreement with somebody to pull a gun out and then go shoot them. It's never been okay. It's not part of any culture. I don't want to hear, well, that's my culture. It's part of no culture, right? It's not part of the culture that I grew up in India, Pakistan, in that area, or people in this country. It's not part of innate part of our culture. So we got to stop doing that. When somebody says that, it's the whole stuff. Stop. You might have invented that 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, but stop that. That's not who we are. So.
How do we balance, and again, this is open mic for whoever wants to answer this. How do we balance the rights of gun owners with the need for public safety? Because again, the amendment says, the Second Amendment says, I got a right to have a gun.
Yeah,
I'm sorry? The third question now is how do we balance the rights of gun owners with public safety? And who wants to get with it? You want that too? Yeah,
I'll just give me a perspective. Oh, sorry. Be careful.
You see that football bounce?
For me, from a constitutional perspective, one of the most important rights is your ability to move around freely in this country. First Amendment rights, right to assemble, safety in your home, right, which protects you, the community, from government from being unreasonable searches and seizures, right? There are no absolute rights in the Constitution, right? Everything has a way. Commonsensical courts have ruled for a lot of different things to say, sometimes you don't have time to get a warrant because of emergency occurred, right? Someone's been shot at. So to me, any kind of obviously, I carry a gun. It's a constitutional privilege that's given to us. So most people who are right in the middle, which is I am, don't talk about taking guns away. You talk about a sensible way to approach it. This is a deadly weapon. What Ohio has done and some other states have done, it makes very little sense from a common sense perspective, where you're giving somebody the ability to have something that takes somebody's life, but you don't want any training on that, and just even a safety briefing to say, hey, do not put your finger in the trigger, right? Because we have a lot of accidental deaths, right? Accidental shooting. We actually had that one where a young man killed his own brother because they were playing with a gun, just last year. So having some kind of sensible background checks, safety training makes perfect sense. Whether that will, so to me, that's the balance. The balance is, the Constitution is written in a way that the courts have ruled that, yeah, that is a privilege that according to every citizen. But that doesn't mean that we can't have some sensible things in place to make sure that it's done in the right manner. This is really a 25-year-old phenomenon. When I first got in law enforcement, that was not as big a deal, but I think it's more driven by economics than anything else. It's about money. I don't think it's about, I personally, my opinion, not the opinion of Baker PD, it's nothing to do with Second Amendment. It's an issue of making money.
Correct. Thank you. Yeah, I like that answer. Would you like to? Please feel free. That's why you're here.
Yeah, let me just say that from our perspective as Moms Demand Action and Everytown for Gun Violence, universal background checks is the #1 thing we've always worked for, which means that everyone has to have a background check before they get a gun from either a person-to-person transfer or a person-to-person sell, online sales, what are those parties they do? Anyway, no matter what you're doing, if you get a gun, you have to have a background check. There are lots of sales that don't go through background checks. And that's the #1 thing. What we need to do, like he was saying, is prevent it. And background checks are a way of preventing guns getting into the hands of people who wish to do others harm, or have the tendency and the background that shows that was true. All these laws that I'm mentioning have been through the court system and shown to be constitutionally sound. We are, with these laws, making it harder to get a gun in some ways, but a responsible way to get a gun. Red flag laws are another way that things that we can do to prevent things that have been, to prevent gun violence that's been through the courts. We need to fix the Charleston loophole so that nothing happens like did in Charleston at the church, where somebody passes on a background check because they waited 3 days and nothing's come back. That needs to stop. And safe storage laws. Those are another life-saving thing that can keep people from causing harm to themselves. Kids accidentally finding a gun and causing harm to themselves and others. And then we just need to recognize gun violence as a public health crisis. Once again, address it from every single angle.
All of those suggestions that she made are welcomed by gun owners. So why can't we make this happen? What we hear frequently by the right, and this is not politics, but that's the main Texas position. They're quick to say it's a mental health issue.
Yes.
Without looking at the other issues. So, Dr. Becker, can you speak to that?
The bottom line is that yes, it can be a mental health issue. I spoke to it earlier. I was talking about the temporary insanity once you get mad, depressed, or upset. But those aren't always the same people who are committing particular acts. We have a stereotype as far as you look at Timmy. Timmy's a white male and basically goes to school, gets straight A's, and so we doesn't think him as a potential shooter of 15 kids in the building. But you'll see another student who may be fighting all the time, nevertheless black, and nevertheless we stereotype him and say, well, he's problematic. We think we should lock him up and do some other alternative settings for him. So once we start stereotyping and get to the real issues of, number one, does this student have any particular history of trauma, okay? Number two, are they being seen by a psychologist? And so all these are preventative measures, but we don't always act on them. When we talk about gaining access to guns, believe me, if a child or a young adult wants to get a gun, it's very easy for them to get a gun.
Amen.
Now, this is just real stories right here. I had an older gentleman. Every time he bought a gun, he would buy his younger brother a gun.
Oh.
So they had matching guns. What he would do is the younger brother would hide them inside his walls. He had over 100 guns. Luckily, he didn't commit any crimes with the guns. He got them for something else. Arson. He tried to blow up the high school. Yes, he was mentally disabled. Yes, he was emotionally disturbed. Yes, he had a potential to use those guns in a very bad manner. Now, this isn't just a made-up story talking about some kid naturally in another state away. This is right here. Another young lady, straight A's. We find a gun in the back of her desk. Luckily, we retrieve the gun before she has it on her possession. We find out that she'd been sexually molested by her father's friend, and her father didn't believe her, so she was going to commit suicide. Now, once again, this is right here. I'm not talking about some far-off distant place. We often react to the news that we hear, but don't know that it is an underbelly, it is an iceberg as far as how many things actually go on that we have no clue about. Gun violence is real, and unless we act like it's real, right here, it won't change.
Awesome. Okay, I'm going to speed ahead a bit. The one question I want you guys to still answer, and again, everybody don't have to respond, but the issue of culture issues such as the don't snitch rule, that's more specific for our community. I think Chief mentioned it in his opening statements. Brother Shaq, can you address that? Because you're out there in the community with the guys.
What?
Oh, did I choke you?
Don't worry, Doc. I know you wouldn't choke. The snitch rule is real. You know, being a New York City kid, I mean, it's just so real. But I teach a little bit different. The first thing I teach young people is think before you think. Think before you act. Think before you speak. Think before you give up. Think before you quit. Think before you think. You've always got to be a thinker because there's an attack on you, and it don't have to all the time be physically, but it's spiritually, emotionally. Because if I kill your emotion, you're out there. And so you teach young people, see, we really got to teach them when they're young. The snitches, I tell young people this, if I'm on my street, and you come down my street, and you about to rob somebody on my street, wait a minute, it's a difference between being a snitch and a citizen. I am a citizen. I have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I have a right to protect my community. So you're going to come commit a crime. See, being a guy that mama locked me up when I was 15 because I wouldn't get my gun, I learned something about that whole snitch thing. You have a right to be a citizen. You have a right to protect your block. You have a right to protect your community. The sad thing is we act like we don't want to protect it. So I don't really buy into that snitch. A snitch is me and him go commit a crime and he tell he a snitch. But if I'm over there minding my business and I'm protecting my community, I have a right to be a citizen. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? And then one of the things I do is with the elders in my community, I go door to door. I saw a young man about 6 months ago. We have a lady like 70 years old. No, it's like 80 years old. And he walking toward the door. I said, hey, what's up, young brother? Hey, that's Miss Brown. What you going Miss Brown for? What you going over here for? You know it? He didn't know. I said, look, bro, this is the wrong community. You see all these lights I came on? We got neighborhood watch, not hood watch.
And we'll take, after this statement, we'll take questions from the others.
Along with not snitching, there's some other cultural nuances that we also have because we have some things as far as how we protect our own. Bottom line is, if you do something to my family, then it's not I'm gonna come get you, we gonna come get you. Now the issue is, I can't say that it's always not, it is meant to be a retaliation, but the question is, how do we retaliate? Instead of the first thing you do going picking up a gun, that's the issue. That is our first inclination, is to go get a weapon. We're going to do something very bad to them. We're not going to scare them. Many of us are taught if you pick up a gun, you use it. And so some of those inclinations, especially our youth, because the first thing they're going to say is, I was disrespected. It didn't nobody hit them. It didn't nobody physically abuse them or touch them, that I was disrespected. So we got elders scared to speak to the youth. So, and how we react to a situation. Yes, you may want to do something, but how we do it is the question.
So this part of the program now is audience participation. I got my first question here. You guys can line up behind her, but I also need some signatures. Nobody has signed in. You guys didn't hear anything you want to be a part of? Let's volunteer. Let's get your names on the sheets.
So I seen this on the news this morning. I was on my way to work.
And it's gonna have to be a question, not a commentary. So,
Oh, then I'm gonna let that go.
well, I'll let you make.
In 2020. Mr. Chief.
Yeah. Can you, okay, go ahead. Go ahead. Well, Derek's around.
I would like to see him.
So you want to talk privately to him, or you want to talk to him?
I want to talk to everybody because again,
Just take 2
in
minutes.
2020,
2 minutes ago.
my son was shot and killed in Dayton, Ohio, born and raised. And because of that, because he was bound over as an adult at 16, they said his name couldn't even go on the tree of life because of the situation. Yeah. It did. It happened. What I'm saying is, I'm upset because I see this room empty, and there's a lot of mothers out here grieving. White, black, Hispanic. It don't even have a color on it at this point. And when y'all passed that law that we was an open state, carry state here, y'all made it very convenient for these people to walk in places and kill whoever they wanted to, without no consequences behind it, until y'all do an investigation. And then, I'm just saying, I'm not pointing fingers. It should have been stopped a long time ago.
It's a collective also.
Everybody is responsible.
Right. Okay.
All right, I'm gonna go though. I have to say that.
You know what? That
And
passion,
again, I carry my son right here.
and the passion that I hear, I really think you should. I
I'm
know you signed
angry.
here.
It ain't even no passion. I'm angry.
Can you sign mothers to be in action? I think they need to hear your speech.
I want to tell my story to the juvenile.
This is a good way to do it. This is the way to do it. Yo, sign, she signed here. Sign there. Next question. Say it again. That's it.
I
Yes,
had to say that. Because why is it
praise the Lord, everybody. My name is Michelle Campbell. I'm Dr. Brown. I love Dr. Brown, but I didn't know he was going to be here today. God compelled me to come because I'm very concerned about a lot of things. And I'm just going to say this briefly. Yes, sir.
We're going to be respectful inside of this house. Number one, this is God's house. And number two is the NAACP house right now. And then number three, we need to make certain that we're asking questions. We need to ask a question and let the panel respond to the question. And anybody who wants to be able to sign up for any one of these programs, you can feel free to do so.
Thank you. I have several questions, but I'm only going to start with one. Okay. And the one question I'd like to ask the panel, how do we, as a community, create a process where everyone, and when I say everyone, I'm talking about all of our professionals, our doctors, our teachers, our police officers, our medical professional, we're all dealing with something. We're all dealing with stress. We have problems at home, we bring them home. How do we create a process that can screen everybody? I remember, okay, when I was a patient of a particular wonderful doctor, that every time I went, I got screened. I got asked questions according to my mental state, okay? I go to the doctor now, I don't get that. I don't get that. I get 10 to 15 minutes, I'm sorry. So the question is, how do we create a process where everybody is required at some point to have a mental evaluation throughout their lifetime, throughout their career? Thank you.
Good question. That sounds like Dr. Becker question. The next question I can come stand. And we still want people to sign the sheets, please. I want everybody's signature down.
I hate to be pessimistic, but I will tell you it most likely won't happen. Now, I'll tell you why. I'm here doing this as a community servant. Okay? For that to happen, you're going to have a lot of resources, because a lot of people are wanting to get paid.
That was one of my other questions.
And that's just the honest truth about it. And so it's very difficult to have all the resources in order for that to start. But if you want to start as far as on the grassroots level and state things like, okay, we want to at least have this start in kindergarten, start moving it forward, and start having it moving through schools, and start moving it that way. Then you can start having particular instances where you can get a mass group of people, okay, and start early. Your churches, they also will do something like that as well. But if you want to get professionals and everybody else, unfortunately, we often tend to be thinking about resources of using professional nature. And unfortunately, they don't always think out of the kindness of their heart.
So I can tell you that every officer that gets hired, at least in Ohio and Dayton, has to go through psychological testing and has to make it through. That is about almost $800 that we pay. Now, that's only the beginning. So one of the things we're working on, I just had a conversation. There's mental well-being is a big issue in law enforcement. So we're trying to figure out what mechanism we put in place today for the continued well-being of our officers, because I don't want them to, because life still gets in the way. Because we just had to we had a young man that we got rid of because of some issues that he had because of personal, nothing professionally, but what occurred was that because of that, he no longer works for us. But I thought it was a failure on our part that he didn't know that he could come to us when he was having those issues before it became manifested something that we couldn't then be okay with. So we're working on that, but it is very, very expensive. Dr. Beckham is absolutely 100% right. There's a lot of money that goes into it.
Very good. Thank you, Chief. Thanks, Dr. Becker. The next question, can you give your name, please? You keep 2 minutes.
I'll try. My name is Alberta Taylor. I am Vice President of Old Dayton View Community Priority Board. I have a question. I've raised 4 black boys, 1 black girl. We lived in a house, my children were raised with a mother and a father. I am a gun owner, but my children had the sense enough not to bother they never saw them. We never brought them out in public. They're under a locked box. But you have children that know the combination of mommy and daddy's little locked box, and they get in there. It is easier for a child today to get a hold of a gun than it is for them to go to the store and buy a loaf of bread. And my thing is, I signed her petition. We've had death in the family, gun, suicide. Okay? I would like to work with you because I would like to input my...
Amen.
You're an important voice. You're very important.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for your passion. Thank you for your passion. We love you. Thank you for volunteering. So this is what we want to accomplish. Your name, please, sir?
My name is Kenneth Jackson. I just have one question for the panel.
Yes, sir.
How many people are in the NRA?
You asking the panelists or
Oh,
the
ma'am,
audience?
audience, panel, is anybody in here?
Show of hands.
Show of hands. Anybody?
We didn't hear the question.
NRA members. Show your
Anybody?
hand.
I understand. So since they're the second,
So look like there's 9 of them in here.
okay, so that was one of my reasons. She may be on the panel listening to us concerns.
I'll accept it.
I know, I mean, there's no
Absolutely.
discouragement towards you.
I did ask questions about gun owners, but I did not bring in RA2. Next time we do it, we'll do that. Thank you.
Because that's his way. And then,
Absolutely.
and then other thing about
Are
this.
you a member of NRA?
No, I'm not.
You a member?
Right. And I just think
Thank you.
the spiritual part was a great.
Amen. Amen. I think you next. You want to sign one of them? You gonna sign them all? Oh, appreciate you, brother. Come on, sister. Articulate. You don't have to stand for that.
Okay, I can't stand. But I was one of Dr. Brown's patients, and I had what they call paranoid schizophrenia. And I took that paranoid schizophrenia. I said, okay, if I can get upset with paranoid schizophrenia, now I'm gonna settle down here with this Bible book, and I'm gonna get it from Genesis to Revelation, and I'm gonna do it to the day He called me out of here. And I did, and I got over it. There ain't no such thing as schizophrenia, because if it was, Jesus would have told you.
Amen.
Bring that devil right out of you.
My name is Abdul Shakur Ahmed. Assalamu alaikum to Pamela and everyone else here. 1993, Dayton, Ohio, dealt with Dr. King. And we came with increased peace. How many people here know about that? So that was a solution, Quinn. A solution that the city, everybody, chief said, everybody's got to be involved. Everybody was involved. The mayor, everybody, the whole city came together to address the issue. We haven't had a prayer vigil. Reverend Fox brought it up. We came together. We dealt with the issues. I was working in juvenile detention at the time. Asking young men, why y'all wilding out? I don't know. I've heard the word culture. Our culture, and Dr. Ford just reminded us where we're at. We're in the house of God. In Islam, there's a verse that says, Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what's in their hearts. In Deuteronomy, it says, love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, mind, body, and soul, and love others as you love yourself. What's the culture? Reason people have guns? They fear. That's why you got a gun. You're scared that somebody's going to get you before you get them. So we start to go back to Egypt. Who were they? What was they told to do? What were the commandments? And we say, here we are. We're in the church. We're in the church. We got to step forward and establish the culture of love. It's going to be hard, but the first thing we got to do is have a party for Satan and ask him to leave town.
Give your name and your question.
John Robinson, Reverend John Robinson. My question is, how can we be more impactful in getting this word out to the community about this particular type of event? And how can we be more effective in presenting that to younger people that it impacts the most?
Yeah, that's a good question. One of the things is, I think that when we're talking about mental health, I think we got, about 150 churches in Dayton. Every church should be a mental health center. And all that simply means you should be able to get help. When it comes to mental health, you should be able to come to that church. We got to get back to the 24-hour churches too. Even if I'm not there, there's a number that should be called. Little Pookie in trouble, I need you to come. What we're gonna have to do to really be successful, we gotta do like I saw my mom and them do. My mother was a Christian running with the Seventh-day Adventists. They would be out there, they was knocking on them doors. We got to adopt a block and literally go door to door and create the village. Because once you create the village, you wear the village. Wear the village means it's in your heart. If we say it takes a village, we've got to create the village. The only way you can create a village is going door to door. We got to go where the young people at. And even like with this panel, we do need young adults. Where the millennials at? Where the youth at? We need more people to be on this panel. Because guess what? They're going to be the ones knocking on them doors. It ain't going to be a lot of us. So we knock on them doors and we take ministry to the people, a church without walls, because the community is hurting, but it's going to take us to get out, the ones that can do it. The other ones, where your money at? We need your money.
Okay, thank you. Man, sir, any question?
My name is Renard Hollingsworth, and I'm not going to be before you long. I need to know why on Capitol Hill can't we come into an agreement about these guns? We got one side saying that, well, we need to do mental health background check. And then we have another side saying that, it's about the long gun. There's something confusing about that. I think it's both. And what we're talking about right now, locally here in Dayton, is not going to cut it. We need a national agreement on what's going on. This thing is getting, the more we talk about it, it seems like the more it's getting worse. You tell me why and how did a 6-year-old get a gun, a 9mm, and shoot his teacher? How did that happen? Somewhere something is broken, and we need to get our heads out of the sand. And one more question, and this is going to be for the chief and Shaq. We have a governor, Mike DeWine, that passed a law. First it was stand your ground, and then he came back and passed a law talking about that you don't even need an ID or handgun license to purchase a gun anymore. And that you can shoot somebody if you feel like you are in fear of this person, even if you know they don't have a gun. There's something wrong with that. Our own governor. Chief, how do you feel about that?
Quick answer, not good. I'm not sure how to answer that question in a political arena. I deal with information that I have. We have way too many shootings. I look at what the commonalities. I'm not sure that, one of the things that I'm going to tell you Brother Shakur talked about it also as a Muslim, I don't look for anybody else to help save me at all. That's not the way I was taught. It's on us. So you can have all the guns in the world. If from what Dr. Becker mentioned, from a psychological perspective, we don't think that way. It's really not going to be an issue. But I don't know how to answer that. It's not a law that has any common sense to it, right? Because the most violent crime that occurs in our countries, it's not the mass shootings. It's people who somehow know each other and they get in a beef for whatever reason and they shoot each other. So this fear mongering that is a reason that they push a lot of this stuff up. Reality is that violent crime doesn't occur that way. Now it doesn't mean that people who have no connection at some point are not shot by somebody that they have no connection with. But most of the crime that occurs, violent crime, it could be people getting shot, it could be sexual assaults, are committed among people that somehow has some connection. Doesn't mean they're friends, but have some connection, whether it's the wrong trade. So I think this fear-mongering is what pushes it. And I don't know the answer to that question, whether it's intentional or what that is, but it's not based on actual information. It's not based on facts.
Our governor, who passed the law, says you don't need a gun license to purchase.
I don't agree with it, but that's, I'm going to tell you that I don't agree with it.
Okay, thank you. Young lady.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Deborah Clark. My question is, I would like to know why in the city of Dayton are there so many group homes being brought in the residential area? Because I noticed that the group homes, they're causing a lot of the violence that's in my area. We have had, I think, at least 2 to 3 shootings over at Princeton Park and in that area, and I'm right there. I actually found a bullet the next day in my driveway. I don't understand why are they people that need help, or you know, have mental issues or whatever, and you're putting them in a residential area, and when they have disputes with the other people in the other group homes, with the girls, the boys, they're all just, behavior is just terrible, and they are solving their issues by trying to shoot one another. This is what's going on where I live here in Dayton.
Yeah, that's probably an issue you take to the city commissioner and let them identify that as a target that area. We can only have one other statement, hopefully a question, not a statement.
I might do both, Dr. Brandon. Okay. My question is, or statement, my question is, do you think it would be plausible, number one, to, when folks purchase guns, we know the background check, but also looking at when they register, that's all part of that as well. The other thing that I just wanted to say also too is that Chief, that we know that guns are coming into the community through purchases, but also under the black market. And what's being done about that? Because that's where a lot of our guns are being sold. Also, too, I think that mental health a lot of times is being scapegoated in terms of the shootings that go on, because a lot of folks that have these guns don't have those mental health issues, and I think that those things need to stop scapegoating.
Don't mean to be rude. We're supposed to get out at 8 o'clock. Can you make a one sentence response to that? And then we got to turn it back over to our president.
Yeah, I think that I don't disagree that when there are straw purchases, that I think every time we have a lot of stolen guns that we recover from people. We do question, and every time we suspect that it might have a straw purchase, we go to ETF. We have the ability to track that. I'm not going to go to tactics from. We understand that there are black market for a lot of different things. So we have investigators who are always looking at it, working with the federal partners, looking at criminal enterprises to see what we can do. When we identify someone, it takes a little long time to address that. But yeah, we understand that. So some of it will be tactics that I don't want to get into here.
Okay, thank you. Well, thanks everybody. We're going to leave the sheets out. You can come up and sign as you exit it. Right now, we're going to give it back to President Ford.
Let's give it, hold on a second. So let's give it up for our panel right here. And then also our chair who has put the panel together, Dr. Morris Brown. So as you heard here this evening, gun violence is a mental health crisis. It's a mental health crisis from a police department standpoint. It's a public health crisis from the community standpoint. It's a public health crisis from parents hurting who have lost their children. It's a public health crisis for individuals who are dealing with mental health. It's a public health crisis when moms have a demand for action on gun reform. When we have a governor who signed into law allowing guns, inside my wallet I have my gun license. I have my permit. I had to go through training to get this permit. But our governor signed into law that you don't have to get a permit. Anybody can carry a gun. Anybody. Doesn't make sense. Especially when we know what's going on throughout this country today. Yes, there's laws on the books, but how about that law? So when we have individuals who are willing to get like street soldiers who are in the communities, talking to these youth, each one of us can do that. If you know, I see early on, it's one thing I know, and as I mentioned a few minutes ago, that we're in the house of the Lord. But God, Jesus, was a community man. He wasn't locked up inside the walls of the church. He was outside the walls of the church, saving souls, healing the blind, dealing with the people who are the thieves and bringing them on to Christ, dealing with the murderers. He was on the outside of the walls. So yes, we're calling upon our church family to get engaged on the outside of the walls, because that's where we're needed. They need that spiritual guidance. Our youth need spiritual guidance. But if everybody do their part, if we all do our part, talking to our nieces, our nephews, our grandsons. I have cousins who are in the street, heavy in the streets. I have cousins who died in the streets. As a matter of fact, that's the first time I ever flew on a plane, is when my cousin in Frederick, Maryland got shot by a hail of bullets sitting inside of his car. First time I ever flew a plane in 2006 as an adult. Because we had to get there to console my aunt, just like the woman who just left here, her heart is hurting from losing her son. And I agree with her. That there should be more mothers in here, more fathers in here to address this issue. A panel discussion like a panel discussion is not going to solve the issue, but at least we can get it in the media's hands that the media can talk about it, and hopefully somebody will have a receptive ear to listen. But as the NAACP, it makes our job hard. When we gotta come to the police and say, hey, what happened in this particular situation? What happened in that particular situation? They got a hard job. Think about all the different homicides that we've had just this year with black on black. And really that burns me to no end. It burns me to my core. Because we're better than that. So, when we talk about this, just gun violence in general, think about Chicago. Y'all hear about it. I was just in Detroit past 2 days. Think about it, Detroit. We don't want, Shaq don't want, he doesn't want, she doesn't want, he doesn't want, he doesn't want that to come here. That level of violence. So we got to do something about it. Collectively as a human race. So when we sit up here and think about all these murders, senseless murders, in my opinion, we got to do something about it. So I'm sorry I get fired up when I talk about, especially us killing us. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank the panel. I thank our moderator for this very well-informative meeting this evening. And next month, I know we're going to be engaged. And next month is the month of July. So what do we have in July? Who has July? Anybody know what our topic is? No. Okay, well, all right. So with that, have a good evening, everybody. Take care.